One of the reasons that we all like using TickTick is that it's constantly evolving. They have an active development team there at TickTick where they're constantly making improvements and enhancements to the TickTick app. And it's nice to use an app that is constantly being updated, constantly having new things come about where we can enhance our own workflow based on what they come out with. Oftentimes, those changes and improvements are kind of small and we don't really notice them. And so what I want to do in this video is just kind of take a look at what TickTick has come out with in the last couple of months. I didn't notice anything new in my workflow, and maybe you didn't either. So let's go take a look at what TickTick has published as their improvements and enhancements to the application in the last couple months. All right, so I'm coming out here to the TickTick changelog, and this is a public website. If you've never been out here, you can just Google TickTick changelog, and it should be the first result. But here's where they publish their changes that they've made, at least to the web application. Now, there are other logs for the mobile apps on Android and iOS, but in general, TickTick does a good job of keeping the apps the same across all platforms, from what I can tell. So let's take a look at what they have for the web application. So the latest entry here is from October 16th. It says it's an improvement and they optimized the Pomodoro experience. And in detail, they added extra focus duration. And it says, if you continue working after a focus session ends, you can now add the extra time to your focus record for more complete tracking. All right, so let's go take a look at what exactly that means. I'm going to pull up the TickTick app. Okay, so it was referencing the Pomodoro functionality. So I'm just going to go to my settings and turn on the Pomodoro functionality. In Features, Pomodoro, turn it on. So now I have Pomodoro over here. And I'm going to make mine short. That way we can see what happens. So let's say, in fact, I'm going to make it shorter than that. Let's make it 1 minute. Oops. It doesn't let me, I didn't know that, but it doesn't let you go lower than 5 minutes. That's kind of funny. I can go up, but five minutes is the lowest it will let you go. So let's go ahead and start this Pomodoro timer. So the scenario is, I'm going to do some focused work for 5 minutes. That's the timer that I've set. And after that 5 minutes, I will give myself a break. So let's go ahead and start our Pomodoro timer for 5 minutes and come back. All right, so as this winds down, the idea here is that we've been focusing on our work for the last 5 minutes and our Pomodoro timer is going to end, but we're still engulfed in our work. So we want to keep on working. We don't want to stop just because our Pomodoro timer stopped. We want to keep on working. And let's say we worked for 6 minutes or 7 minutes, and we want to make sure that our tracking system has that we actually focused for 7 minutes and not just 5. So let's come over here. I'm going to X out of this. And to be honest, it took me a minute to find where you do this at. What I originally did was I exited out of this screen, and then it seemed like I couldn't edit the duration at that point. But you'll notice that something just popped up on my screen where it says click to add to focus duration. So it's been 1 minute, 10 seconds since our timer has ended, and we can actually click on this to add that time to our duration. So we can click here, or the other option is we can come up to the 3 dots in the upper right, and we can say edit the focus duration. And again, from what I can tell, it has to be done on this screen. If you leave this screen, then you're kind of stuck. But let's go ahead and say, yeah, we kept on focusing for this additional time, and it gave us an extra minute. Even though it was 1.5 minutes, it gave us an extra minute. So let's say we want to edit it to 7 minutes. I'm going to come up to the three dots, edit focus duration, and it's kind of interesting because it only allows you to pick the number of minutes that it's been since that 5-minute ending, if that makes sense. So it's been 2 minutes since that 5-minute ending, so I can pick 7, but I can't pick 8. But let me wait just a little bit longer. I'm going to come back into that section and see if it lets me pick 8 minutes. All right, I think it's been long enough. Let's go back into that section and see if it allows us to pick 8 minutes now. Yeah, so now we can pick 8 minutes because it's been 4 minutes after the 5-minute ending. So let's go ahead and choose 8 and save. You can see it updates here to 8 minutes. And then here we can choose relax, skip, or exit. I'm going to go ahead and exit. We can see that it logged an 8-minute duration of focus. So that's the idea behind that enhancement or that improvement, is that you can now modify that final duration that you actually focused in order to keep your logs accurate. All right, let's go back to the TickTick change log and see the next one. All right, so the next one I think we already covered. It says editable focus duration. If you finish early but forget to stop the timer, you can now manually adjust the duration on the focus completion page for more accurate records. And so that was the second way, where we went up to the three dots and we said edit the duration. The important thing here is that it says on the focus completion page. So let's go back to the app. I want to point that out real quick, that once we're here and we're off the focus completion page, there is no way to edit this time that I know of. If somebody else knows of a way to edit the time after the fact, let me know. But as far as I can tell, after you're off that focus completion page, there is no way to modify the duration of your focus record. All right, let's go back to the changelog. And let's look at the entry from September 5th. So on September 5th, they said there's another improvement, optimized focus record experience. It says more flexible editing, removed restrictions for adding and deleting focus sessions, manage your records more freely. So if I come back out here to the app and I hit the plus button, I can add these focus records. Now, to be honest, I don't use this all the time, so I'm not exactly sure how this used to look. It seems to me that it used to be a little more restricted on how you could add your focus records. But let's go through this and see if we can't add a focus record here. So we can choose a task that we're focusing on, or we can leave it blank, I believe. But let's go ahead and select water the imaginary plants. Our start time was today at let's choose 7:15. And our end time was 7:29. And the type here says, was that 2 pommos? We could change that to 1 if we wanted to. We could move it up to 3. Let's change it to 1. So in that case, it modified my end time to 20 minutes. If I move it back up to 2, I want it to end at 7:29. So let's go back in and change this to 7:29. And we can leave a note here if we want to. And then click OK. So now we see it down here. Water the imaginary plants. Kind of interesting that it didn't actually take my 7:29 end date, right? So it took the 2 pommos, which my pommo is set at 5 minutes each. So we have one entry here for 5 minutes, and then the next entry here for 5 minutes. And we don't actually have the last 4 minutes there. So maybe still some improvements to be made on this section, in my opinion, if you're going to let me accurately keep my focus logs. And it seems that that's what some of the improvements have been lately. It seems like that the app should let me put in 7:29 as the accurate ending time for that focus session, if that's what it actually was. That's my opinion. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments if you think I'm right, or if you think that how the app is working right now is okay. All right, so let's go to the second one under September 5th, which says added filters. Filter records by date, duration, or linked status to quickly find what you need. All right, so when I go to the TickTick app and I pull it up, I don't see any filters. And I thought, well, maybe it's in the statistics section. So if you click the three dots up here and you come to statistics, this kind of gives you, an overview. And there are some filters here, right? I can filter by, or at least group by list, tag, task, group by date, week, month. But there's no filter like what the changelog said. So the changelog says filter records by date, duration, or linked status. So when you come out here to read the changelog, you sometimes have to figure out what exactly they're talking about. And so in this case, I'll show you what they're talking about. Let me click done here and come back to the focus records section. If I click the three dots here and click batch management, here are the filters that they're talking about. So when you want to edit in batch, you have these filters now where you can filter by date. So for example, if I just want the records that were created this week, these were the records created this week. If I want to just have records that are a certain duration, I can come out here and click, less than 10 minutes, and it gives me just the records that are less than 10 minutes and so forth, right? And link status, whether they're linked or unlinked. And I guess probably the most useful way to use this is if you were going to delete records, right? So let's say, for example, you wanted to delete all of your records that are not linked to tasks. You could come out here and say, give me all of the unlinked records, which I have 2 from today. I could select all and I could delete those because they weren't linked to any task. And then I could come out here and they're gone, right? So that's really the only thing that I can think of to use these filters for, because the rest of the editing, there isn't a lot that you can edit on these focus entries anyways, right? So I can come out here and really the only thing I can do is I can change the task. So water the imaginary plants was the task that we had set when we started the focus timer. But I can come out here and say set task and choose a different task. Let me go to my tasks, and maybe train the cat to use the remote control was actually what I did during that time. And so I can change that task link. But that's really all that, and that would be like a one-by-one or a case-by-case basis, right? It wouldn't be like I'd select everything that was less than 60 minutes and change to a task, I don't think. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. But really the only case that I can come up with is that you would use these filters in order to do a mass delete. But let me know in the comments if you find these filters useful and what you actually use these filters for. Okay, so let's go back to the changelog. It says clear history. Easily remove all focus records and start fresh whenever you need. And so that was kind of what we just talked about, right? So you can come out here and you can use the batch management to delete certain records, or there is now delete all, which if you click that, it says, hey, are you sure you want to delete all of your focus records? And you have to check the box and then click delete, and then they're all gone and you can start fresh. All right, so that covers the last few updates that TickTick has put out over the last 6 weeks or so. Again, constantly improving the app, making updates. It's kind of fun to go out there to the changelog, read about the updates, and then try to figure out what exactly has changed and what improvements have been made, and then figure out if you can use those new enhancements in your workflow some way. Well, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.